Just keep some water with me just in case.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar for Climate Tracker on strategic lawsuits against public participation. I'm Nidalini, and I work as a legal consultant for Climate Tracker. And today I will be interviewing and talking to Mr. Subir Ghosh, who is one of India's finest environmental journalists. He's written extensively on environmental issues, worked on various areas of environmental law, of environmental reporting, such as forest rights relating to mining industries. And he's also the author of the book Sue the Messenger, which documents these strategic lawsuits against public participation in India. And he himself has had significant experience with SLAPPs due to the kind of reporting he's done. And we're very happy to have you today with us. Welcome to the webinar, Subir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Binari, for having me here.
Okay, we really look forward to this discussion. So before we start talking about SLAPPs per se, I just wanted to introduce our viewers to your work and your journey. So, how did you venture into environmental journalism? Were there any memorable turning points? We would really like to know about your journey into environmental journalism, since Climate Tracker is a network of climate journalists.
See, it was more of a coincidence than anything else. So this would have been in the summer of 1998 when I had just left the Telegraph and I was looking looking for a change. And that's when I got an offer from the Center for Science and Environment in Delhi, and I was based in Calcutta at that time. So this was 1998, as I said. And Anil Agarwal, who headed the Center for Science and Environment, was looking for someone to work in the books and publications unit of the organization. So that's when the offer came, and I kind of was initially a bit hesitant in terms of wanting to or having to leave mainstream journalism and go into something about which I had no clue about. But I took the decision and I shifted over to Delhi, and that's how I ended up initially dabbling with environmental issues, and then over the years, kind of specializing in environmental issues. So that's how actually it started. It was more of a quirk of fate, so to speak, than a very conscious decision on my part. So this was, like I said, the very late 1990s, and environment as such was something which was kind of uh, not really so much of a of a beat, as far as reporters were concerned, and it was something that reporters or others were given to do if they had nothing else to do, something of that sort. No, it was kind of nothing that reporters kind of look forward to, and yeah, I had no clue, but then things changed radically after that. So these were actually not only as far as journalists are concerned, or not only as far as reporters are concerned, even the environmental movement in India as such was quite in a nascent stage. There were very few people and very few organizations who were working on environmental issues. No, don't forget that. No, this was just 6 years after Rio 1992. No, Rio 1992 was something that actually changed everything all over the world, India included. So,
Correct. And also, when
so
you say that it was in the 90s, it was also after the Indian economy opened up. So, increase in industrialization and industry also coincided with our increase in our environmental movement now, and it was cyclical. So, at a time when you covered environmental issues, which was there was a lot of industrial and economic change in the country, but you over time you also ventured into independent journalism. You decided to cover certain issues and certain stories in your own specific way, and you pursued your own particular hooks. So, how was the journey transitioning from a journalist to an independent environmental journalist?
I see you kind of become an independent journalist, so to speak, for two reasons. One is by design, and one is by default. In my case, no, between say 1998 until now, I have been in and out of mainstream journalism. A number of occasions I have been with. I have worked with the environmental organizations. I have worked with various other organizations in between. So it was a little bit of design, little bit of default. If you don't have a job, then you obviously become an independent journalist. So that's a. No, I'm not being facetious, but no, it's a fact. But no, those first about 14, 15, 16 years, it was a little bit of design, little bit of default. But after I left DNA in 2014, in the summer of 2014, after that it was like a very, very conscious decision that I'm not going to join any mainstream media organizations. And in the last 3 years or so, I mean, little more than 3 years, 3.5 years, I have even given up writing for so-called alternative media organizations, which I think are alternative more or less only in name. But that's as far as no these kind of organizations is concerned. But being a so-called independent journalist has its plus points. First of all, of course, you're your own boss. But the thing is that it's also a lot of hard work. It's also a lot of hard work because after a year, if you are not selling stories to organizations, which I don't do anymore, then what is it that you're trying to do? So the last so many years, that last 2 3 years, I have decided at least to follow journalistic work through the form of books rather than writing for websites or for newspapers or magazines. So that's for us. To put it very brief, what my this last phase of independent journalism has been.
Correct. Now, coming to our main issue today, which is strategic lawsuits against public participation. So, for our audience who's tuning in, strategic lawsuits against public participation, or SLAPPs as they are known, are filed against civil society or the press or anyone who is reporting or discussing certain issues in the public. But these lawsuits, which are filed against them, are usually without any legal merit. So they're just filed by either corporations or individuals to stifle that criticism or to stifle that reporting. And they're filed against journalists or members of civil society to intimidate them. So often they don't even end up going to court, but it's just to instill the fear of legal costs of uh, initiating any sort of legal action, which is very expensive and time consuming for most journalists or for NGOs. So, when they are threatened with such lawsuits, they will be forced to give up their criticism or revelation. So, those are that is how lawsuits are being used to threaten and stifle journalism. So, environmental journalism specifically has globally witnessed significant incidents of SLAPPs, and this can have a lot of impact on how we protect our environment, because when there isn't enough information and reporting on environmental violations or problems, you cannot mobilize society in order to protest and in order to make the violators accountable. So this flow of information about the environment is very vital. And Subir, you're an authority on this SLAPP lawsuit that you mentioned very in detail about in your book, Sue the Messenger. So how how do you think it affects an author when reporting on environmental issues, like you were reporting on the fossil fuel industry in India? How do SLAPPs affect the journalist and his craft?
See, let's start at the very beginning. As in how the book that we wrote, through the messenger, kind of came about. Now, this followed our earlier book, which was called Gas Wars, Crony Capitalism, and the Ambanis, which was about the KG Basin natural gas issue. Now, this was published in April 2014, and just barely a day had passed after the launch of the book in Delhi. We got a legal notice from Reliance Industries Limited, sent by a lawyer acting on behalf of Reliance Industries and its chairman, Mr. Mukesh Ambani, saying that they had taken objection to a number of things that had been written in the book, and etc. etc. Now, this was followed by another one saying that you have not responded to our earlier legal notice, please respond. And then we got a third uh, notice from the other Ambani sibling, which was Anil Ambani and his organization, which was RNI. Now, uh, what happened was over a period of say about a month, which was we got four legal notices and all. The last one from Reliance Industries Limited saying that you have not responded to any of our earlier notices, and please pay us token damages of rupees 100 crore. It was. Uh, it was kind of initially we found it very funny. Somebody is asking for 100 crores from us. No, we should, as an individual, can ask for 100 crores from an organization as mammoth as Reliance Industries. But it was the other way around. Now, wow, and yeah, we did laugh about it, but it's not that we were not taking things seriously at all. Of course, we were. Because if somebody as big as Reliance Industries Limited and its chairman, they send you a legal notice, then of course you take it seriously. But the thing is that as it transpired, nothing happened after that. And coincidentally, I mean, this was mentioned in the book Through the Messenger also, that coincidentally around about that time, there were two or three other incidents where Jitendra Bhargav's book on Air India, Tamal Bandapada's book on Sahara, all landed up in legal trouble, or they got notices, or were dragged to court, or this were kind of. But basically, these were quite similar, and that's when we realized that no, is there a trend? Is there a trend of more corporates or even other people uh, harassing writers and journalists for what they have written or reported? Now, as we sat down we were initially still discussing about a kind of a possible sequel to Gas Wars, but we dropped the idea and went in favor of Sue the Messenger only because we realized there is indeed a trend. Not everything is documented properly, and there is probably a need to write about it. Is probably a need to document it, and that's how the book kind of the project as such kind of initially took shape, and then finally took the form of a book in 2016. So that was the transition from gas wars to Sue the Messenger. No, it was like very personal because one did not write the book just because we got a legal notice from Reliance. The thing is that there was a trend. There was a need to write about it. There was a need to report about it, and there was a need to bring a particular subject into the public discourse. I mean, hoping that it becomes a discourse. I think initially it did become a discourse, and it has remained in the public discourse for the last 2 years, and for all the wrong reasons, probably because there have been a number of legal notices, huge, asking for huge sums of money from writers and journalists, and even other people from civil society organizations asking for huge sums. These are all of these are almost slaps. So that is what has happened in the last 3 years since gas, last 4 years since gas was, and including Sue the Messenger in between.
Correct. And like you mentioned, the money that is asked in these slap suits is the damages that these corporations or individuals ask is extremely high, unaffordable for even very successful and established organizations. So both the money that is being sought and and the money that is required to argue such a case in court is significantly high. In the book, Sue the Messenger, you talk about one of the cases, which was a very important environmental slap. So you talk about different slaps, but from an environmental perspective, the case which is specifically important for India is the case of Rajasthan Patrika, which you talk about, where a, a group of pesticide manufacturers consolidated themselves into a body called the Crop Care Foundation, and they instituted a slap against Rajasthan Patrika, which was a local newspaper which had just run a series of columns on the harmful effects of pesticides without naming any of the manufacturers. But still, the Crop Care Federation filed a suit and claimed for 500,000 Indian rupees. So that case in your book specifically stayed with me, and the way you described it. So what are your thoughts on the case? What went behind the scenes that led to that sort of slap being followed, and how the journalists at Rajasthan Patrika reacted to that?
Okay. The two things that you mentioned. The first is the question of the huge amounts that are asked for. Uh, we went through all this number of the few cases that we kind of had in hand, and we realized that there is really no pattern. There's really no pattern. I mean, what what is it that people are asking? People are saying that no, you have defamed me, you have damaged my reputation, etc., etc., and therefore you pay me an amount. So, is there a correlation between the no, damage to my image vis-a-vis the amount that I am asking for? Is there any correlation anywhere? We found that there is none. No, so what is it then? It's more of a no, more of a tool to psych out the other person. Even when you get a legal notice for 100 crores, you're going to be rattled. Um, no, we were not. I mean, we were not. I mean, we were kind of either expecting it, and we were kind of well aware of where we stand. But there, and we were, don't forget that we were also no three of us who were kind of co-authors. Now, take the case of individual journalists, freelancers who don't have a full-time job, who have no organizational backing behind them. Now, when they get these kind of legal notices asking for 100 crores, they are absolutely no. It wouldn't be unjustified if they feel rattled, if they feel psyched out. That itself is the first idea. Is to psych out a person so that he or she doesn't do this kind of writing or reportage. Number one, and also to ensure that he or she doesn't follow up the same story. No, it's it's a tool. No, apart from the fact that we will come to the chilling effect of slabs anyway later. But this itself is a huge amount means that it is going to have a huge impact on the individual concerned. So that is the reason why you have these huge amounts. So there is no pattern. There is no formula. You just kind of think of an arbitrary amount, and you might think that 5,000 crores is going to psych out a person. I might think no, no, even 1 crore is going to be no. I can't pay 1 crore anyway. So even 1 crore can psych me out. No, so that was the first thing about no all these huge exorbitant amounts that are kind of written those legal notices that are first sent out. So you first send out a legal notice saying you enlisting your grievances, which may be genuine or may not be genuine. In case of slabs, those are not genuine, of course. Then after that, you follow it up through court. Uh, that is the route that ideally one should be following, if at all you are looking for legal redressal. Uh, Now, coming to the second thing that you said about the crop care foundation of India. Now, this was the person concerned, uh, somebody called Raju Shroff, and he has been behind a number of organizations which have filed. Uh, defamation cases against individuals, against organizations, and there have been both kinds, both criminal defamation cases as well as civil defamation cases against everyone. And this person, through his organization, and he has been through, it's really very difficult to keep track of him. You see, files through the CCFI, files through something, someone else. Now you need to understand his background. He comes from the chemicals and pesticides industry, and since the very late 90s, early 2000s, the movement against toxics uh, around the world, has taken shape, and in India as well. And there have been lots of environmental organizations who have been campaigning against various kinds of insecticides, pesticides, other kind of toxic chemicals. Now, particularly in the usage of, particularly with the ones that are used in agriculture, and so since the movement against these chemicals have been strong, the reaction from this chemicals lobby has been just as strong, and in fact, it has been vicious. It has been very aggressive. It has been very vicious, and they have been very selective about who all to target. Now, that particular chapter about poison around, lists a number of cases, and you will find that most of these cases have been filed with this particular person and the various organizations that he claims to represent, at various points of time. It's like those like the kind of shifting sands. Today he's representing this organization. Tomorrow he will be representing some other organization. But the point remains the same. The point is that there's a particular lobby which is either into making pesticides or into making some kind of chemicals or dyes, etc. No, he's lobbying for all these organizations, and they have been very vicious, like I said, in terms of attacking. There have been personal attacks. Now there is instances mentioned in the book, where they sent a group of people in front of the CAC office, and they put up placards and they raised slogans against Sunita Narayan. Those were very personal attacks. Personal attacks. Then you take them to court, and if you file criminal defamation cases, no, so that that person is hauled to court. It is a different thing altogether that this person has not won a single case. This person has not so far, touch wood. This person has not won a single case, and for all for good reason. The landmark case that is mentioned here as the one that you mentioned about the one with the Rajasthan Patrika. So this was, I think, the judgment came out in 2009, if I'm not wrong. This dragged on
Correct. Yeah.
in the courts for a while, and but the things that the High Court said, if I may quote, that is supposed to be no kind of landmark. This is landmark. This is the first time that the court even said no um, mentioned this term called SLAPP. This came in November 2009. And if I may quote from the book here. So the court says in the judgment, the plaintiff's attempt, in the opinion of the court, by filing the suit here in Delhi in relation to publications in Rajasthan on what were matters of public concern but called for debate, was to muffle the airing of such views. So these were a series of reports. All ground reports, and there was nothing earth-shattering about anything. This was based on absolute facts, based on what the reporters saw on the ground in terms of effects of pesticides on farmers. Now the here is what kind of is more about this organization than anything else. So the court said the suit was not brought by a company really aggrieved. Now, this CCFI was not an aggrieved party. It just kind of bulldozed itself into this kind of a case. By a company were not brought by a company really aggrieved as a manufacturer who alone could have claimed a cause for action, but virtually a trade body, though created as a company limited by guarantee. The attempt was plainly to stifle debate about the use of pesticides and insecticides. Excuse me. Excuse me. Uh, whether such use or overuse of pesticides over a period of time affects life, plant or human, could be a matter of discourse, but certainly not one which could be settled through intimidatory slap litigation. This is landmark for the simple reason that this was the first time that any court had passed an order related to a slap case, and this is something that has been used. The judgment of the court has been used, by advocates, fighting civil defamation or even criminal defamation cases. So it's extremely landmark, and this is something that people fighting slap cases against themselves, as far as writers or journalists are concerned, or lawyers who are fighting for such people. Uh, it needs to be. mm it's a case study in itself, and everyone should kind of go through go through the order very carefully, and that is actually a way to wriggle out of these kind of problems. The court lays it out very clearly.
Correct. And Justice Ravindra Bhatt, who wrote that order in Rajasthan Patrika, has also given another very interesting judgment relating to environmental slaps in the case of Tata Sons versus Greenpeace. Now, Greenpeace, comparatively, is a very big NGO which has a lot of presence. It has significant international branding. So, when they came out with a video game, not a video game, sorry, they came out with a game and which parodied the Tata brand. And with respect to the fact that there was a sea port off the coast of Orissa that in Dhamra that was being built, and it would endanger olive ridley turtles. Now, the game was parodying the trademark of the Tata company, and they sued again for defamation, and it was considered to be a slap. So when it went to court, the the court and the same judge who gave the decision in Rajasthan Patrika, he said that this way to use defamation in order to stifle reporting and to stifle criticism, and slaps would it would be considered to be a slap, what was being done by this company, and they held in favor of Greenpeace. Now, the fact that Greenpeace is also involved in a very other famous slap in the US with respect to Resolute forest products. So Greenpeace tends to also have the strength to argue this out in court and win. But for many organizations, they don't have those kinds of resources, and they don't have the kind of uh, leadership, or just the ability to go to court and get those orders. So how do you see this? Have you noticed any difference in the way big organizations or publications handle slaps versus smaller publications in terms of how they get intimidated, how their strategy is to combat such slaps?
No, not really. There is not much of a pattern. There is not much of a very clear established pattern. But you are very right when you say that it is one thing for a corporate organization to take on Greenpeace, and it is quite different for them to take on a small organization. Uh, in the case of Greenpeace, now a corporate body would definitely be more apprehensive of Greenpeace than say a smaller NGO, which is probably very local, say, based in a city or in a small locality within a city. Greenpeace is not there. If you Greenpeace puts up a video game on its website, or sends out a press release, or starts a campaign on social media, then it's quite likely that you are going to take them seriously. So if you are going to take them seriously, why is it so? You are taking them seriously because you are apprehensive of their reach. what is it that you're worried about? You're worried about the truth. You are worried about the fact that nobody should know the truth. And that is, and since you know that this organization has a huge reach, therefore you go after Greenpeace, all guns blazing. But then Greenpeace is also not a small organization. It is quite, no, it has suffered a huge dent in India for all kinds of reasons. But otherwise, it's a very big one. It has things in place. It has all its PR practices, best practices, everything all in place. It has a legal team in place. So it is also it's a formidable ally as far as it's a formidable enemy as far as no uh, corporates are concerned. That's one thing. But the thing is, the no, would you, supposing you are a Tata Group company, and there is a small NGO somewhere which issues a press release or carries out a public campaign or a social media campaign, are you going to take them seriously? You're probably not going to take them seriously. So you take on a big organization uh, only because of their reach. So the thing that you said, whether smaller organizations have the capability to take on such no slap suits or whatever, the answer would be no. Of course they don't. The thing is that would corporates also be going on for after these smaller organizations? The answer to that would also be no, kind of, yeah, would be very obvious. Could you just give me a second, please? Could you just give me a second?
So, for our viewers who are listening in, please feel free to ask any questions that you have for Subir. And the term slumps that we've been talking about throughout this webinar, it was first coined by two legal researchers and academics, and Mr. George Pring and Penelope Kanan. And they conducted a study which was published in 1989. And in that study, they very emphatically discussed how public participation was being stifled using lawsuits, and they studied 228 cases as a sample. And they found that in these cases, of all the lawsuits that were filed, 77% of these lawsuits were won by the targets of the slap suit. So of 228 cases, 77% of the cases actually did not have legal merit, and they were won by the defendants. So there is an obvious pattern that these cases are not intended to go to court on legal merit, because there are very few legal merit to such cases. But there is a need to intimidate using the threat of legal costs, of using the threat of spending that many man hours and time in that it requires for such defenses. And of course, it is to make an example out of those organizations. As Subir mentioned earlier, it is to um, ensure that some campaigns are stifled and it's made a public spectacle of, that they dared to go against or criticize. So when we talk about slams, we notice again from Kanan and Pring's study, we see that in their sample space, almost 50% of those cases were environmental related, and the others were with respect to civil rights, consumer protection, etc. But environmental and human rights were 21% of those cases, and development and zoning, so like urban planning, was 29% of these cases. So there is a clear effort with respect to instituting slaps in environmental related causes, and we see that in India as well. So with respect to how slaps affect environmental reporting, what was Subir, what do you think is different about environmental journalism that makes it more vulnerable to the institution of slaps? And when you're reporting, is it possible that the journalists who are not possibly the activists get sued? They are just the messenger, as you express in your book. When you're suing the messenger instead of the person who's actually uh, conducting activism or campaigns, etc. So what is the nexus between this environmental journalism and SLAPs, and why do you think the journalists are targeted more, or if they're targeted less, in your opinion?
So you asked a lot of questions, and you also raised a number of ones. I'm not going in any particular order, but in case I missed something, then you please point that out to me. The first thing is the question about the study about when the term SLAP was formulated. Yeah, the thing is that this was done in this was done in the West, where everything is extremely well documented. And we tried to do the same thing, and we realized that it's extremely difficult to kind of replicate the same thing here in India. It was not possible for us to do. If you go through any of this, uh, uh, court, Supreme Court, or High Court websites, it's extremely difficult to go through any of the cases unless you know those case numbers. Only then you can find some. So this is not a journalist job. I think this is best left to uh, uh, people who are lawyers or who have a legal background, big legal background, who know about these things. There's some lawyer or group of lawyers probably needs to they need to do this. That's number one thing. Second thing is that as we talked about with the question of slabs and environment, keep these two things keep on cropping up all the time. Is there a link between the two, or what kind of link is that? No, it's the earliest thing that always comes to my mind in terms of modern history was Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. Now, uh, it this book had the writing of the book, the reportage that she did, and the harassment that she kind of faced, everything. This led to two things. One is from the environmental point of view, and second thing is from the journalistic or writing point of view. So from the environmental point of view, is that within 10 years of the writing of a book, you had the EPA in the US, and this entire thing took a different trajectory altogether. And then this in terms of environmental history or environmental activist history, if you take that thread, you have Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, and then you have the EPA in the US, and then you have the Brundtland Commission report, and then you have Rio 1992, etc. This kind of, that is one trajectory. The second is the question of slabs and reportage. Rachel Carson's work uh, is landmark also in terms of journalistic work. It was basically reportage. It was a reportage also, and the kind of harassment that she faced in the 60s was kind of unbelievable, and that is also something that we keep on seeing even now. We find that the physical threats, the legal threats, are always extremely aggressive and extremely vicious as far as environmental issues are concerned, and all for good reason. No, it's not. It's no. No. Probably come to that later in terms of no. Why is it that a corporate body would go after a journalist? It can be for various reasons. So let us come back to that later. But here, so so there is a history there, from Rachel Carson in the 1960s to all those cases that we have against writers, journalists, and activists as far as environmental issues are concerned. So there is definitely a clear link that you said. No, is there a link between slabs and media? My understanding is that, yeah, uh, probably there's no way, like I said, there's no way to quantify it. Like you said, 70%, 50%. There's no way for me to quantify it. I can only the kind of from first say that yes, from whatever I know from personal experience, from whatever I read here and come to know about. Yeah, most likely I think most uh, slabs would probably be environmental in nature. But don't forget, there's a lot of in recent times there have been a lot of slaps, be it legal notices or be it court cases, which have been related to corporate corruption. The legal notice that we got was related to chronic capitalism and corruption, and all those things, the legal notices and cases against the wire, for instance. Those have hardly anything to do with environment. Those are all kind of violations of corporate compliance. Right. Be it bribery or be it violation of tax laws or whatever. So no, they might be maybe 51%, 49% sometimes at different points of time. So this is environment and corporate corruption. These are the only two kind of subject areas through which you get all these kind of legal notices and court cases. But like I said, no. The very term SLAPP includes the word litigation. No, no, all those cases that we actually talk about are not litigations. Most of them kind of end in the legal notice stage itself. There are very few which, I mean, like I said, in this book, there are probably 15, 20 cases that are mentioned and documented, where hardly two or three have probably gone to court. And whenever those have gone to court, those have all been thrown out by different courts, by the high courts, by even the lower courts. There have been lower courts that have simply kind of dismissed the case against Paranchai and for the article that was published initially in the EPW and reproduced in the Wire. It was a very lower court in Bhuj that threw it out, saying that there was no merit in the case. It was saying that there was no merit. So it went to the court and that's where it got thrown out. So like I said, there are very few which actually become litigation. So, in a very technical definition, can we call these slabs at all? Probably not, because those are not litigations. But yes, that's harassment enough anyway. That something that comes through in the book as well. And now my colleague who is here in Bangalore, K. Acharya, keeps on talking about it. It is the process which is the harassment. No, it's not a question of being sent to jail. It's not a question of being made to pay a fine. It's a process of the process. The entire process is harassment enough, especially if you are an independent journalist. Right from the point of getting the legal notice, you're psyched out. Then you run after hunting for a lawyer. Now there are lots of these cases which, thankfully enough, are taken up by many well-established, well-known lawyers, kind of pro bono. The thing is that we for a small fry, a small-time journalist in a small-time town, who is it that we are going to run after? I'm going to run after go visiting any of those big-time journalists, lawyers in Delhi. I mean, there's a cost involved. There's a cost involved. You're going there, you have to meet that person. So the process is harassment. I mean, at the end of the day, probably the case will get thrown out. Probably, and there's probably a 90% chance, and as far as the track record is concerned, there's probably a 90% chance that the case will get thrown out. But the thing is that till that stage, you're going through a lot of harassment. I know it's and it can wear down your finances if you're the kind of footing the bill for traveling for your legal expenses. It takes a toll on your family life. It takes a toll on your professional life, especially if don't have an organization backing you. It happened in the case of yeah, Achari and the Karuturi versus the IPS thing. Right, organizations simply pulled off the story and left her in the lurch. No, no. And this is an organization which kind of espouses developmental journalism and talking of the gender issues and human rights and all that. And it doesn't even have the spine, the backbone to stand up for its own writer and reporter who had been writing for that organization for a number of years. No, no, no. It's a process of harassment, nothing else.
Correct. And So yeah, we're trying to establish basically. So when they are called lawsuits, they might not even reach the lawsuit stage because they are
Yeah.
intended to be used as a tool, a legal tool of intimidation. So um, and that leads to the chilling effect, because once you know and you're aware of the kind of consequences these legal notices can have, then people self censor, people stay away from reporting on certain cases because they are afraid that they will be sued. So this trickling down in society, where all reporters and journalists are continuously afraid and have to think twice before reporting on vital environmental issues, will invariably have negative consequences on our environment. So in your experiences, how have slaps or the threat of being slapped affected environmental protection itself? Do you think that uh, there is evidence of the fact that certain environmental violations are going the violators are going scot free because of the incidence of slaps, that probably reporters are afraid about reporting on these violations? So
No.
how are journalists responding to the fact that these threats exist? So how, would you like elaborate more on the chilling effect that's happening right now in India about environmental violations?
No, as far as the environmental organizations are concerned, no, there are all kinds of environmental organizations. There are ones who work at the policy level, there are ones who work at the legal level, and there are ones that work at the grassroots levels, the ones who are kind of activists, and there are all kinds of overlapping areas. Now, I really don't think environmental organizations have been on the back foot. They have been only more slightly more variant, slightly more uh, they are well prepared. And if you, I don't think environmental organizations, voices them in there. I don't think anyone has Greenpeace kind of. It has probably toned down its language. You have to be slightly careful about the kind of language that you use or whatever. That's all. Like, it's not that they have stopped working or anything. And the true same is true for lots of other organizations. None of them have stopped working or anything. That's as far as environmental organizations are concerned. Now, in terms of environmental violations, that's a different thing. Whatever the now, why is it that environmental? Especially particularly this government, since it came to power in the summer of 2014. Uh, uh, huh, can you hear me? Yeah, no, sorry. Yeah. We were talking about environmental violations. Uh, has reportage about environmental violations subsided, gone down? I really don't think so. But yeah, in difficult times, difficult times as in terms of political turbulence, and also given the fact that more corporates are taking the legal route, I don't think it has stopped environmental journalists from reporting. Yeah, but as far as organizations are concerned, in terms of the so-called mainstream organizations and even the so-called alternative media organizations, be it websites or whatever, uh, they are probably more apprehensive. So if you are apprehensive, what is it that you do? So you go through a story and see if there is anything that is potentially defamatory. Now, is it that you're doing that because you're apprehensive? In my opinion, you should be doing that in any case, isn't it? Even if you're a normal organization, if you're a normal organization, normal as in a news organization running running news operations, you should be waiting your story in any case. There's nothing fishy about it. There's nothing. Uh, but the thing is that again, there's no way to quantify matters. Now, I can say that no, there is a clamping down. There is a very big chilling effect, just like that, and there's no way for me to point that out. There's no way for me to quantify that. But but chilling effect, the use of the term chilling effect needs to be that term needs to be used in specific contexts. For instance, when we got those the first legal those one, two, three, four legal notices related to gas wars, it did have a chilling effect on others. That is what the chilling effect can be two. The chilling is the first of all I shut you down. Second is that I also ensure that the others don't speak or write or report about that. This chilling effect happens on at two levels. Uh, in most cases, uh, the journalists concerned or the writers concerned don't really shut down. But the thing is that you become more careful. That always happens. But the chilling effect that is more kind of more stark, and it's kind of you need to be blind not to be able to miss it. In the case of others, others as in other individuals, other organizations. So, like I was saying, in the case of gas wars, after we got those four legal notices, nobody really wanted to write about the book. Our point was that if it is a bad book, trash it. Say that it's rubbish. Say that good, bad, and ugly. Do write about it. No, do write about it because the points that have been raised in the book are kind of important.
Correct. We have a question actually related to this by Shreshtaraj Srivastav. He asks, do targets of slabs get compensated in the end? Has any court directed a corporation ever to compensate you yourself?
Oh yes, there is a case that was related to the related to Sucheta Dalal and Money Life, which is mentioned in the book. I'll just tell you where it is. Anyway, I don't remember the exact amount itself, but yes, they were the National Stock Exchange where they were supposed to uh, give an amount to the they were about I forget there was a kind of a breakup, but that is mentioned in the book. Yeah, there has been one case which is quite justified and justified in my opinion. I mean, if you're trying, but that amount I think was extremely small. For a year, for a, 15, 20 lakhs for an organization is nothing much. For an individual, it might be like okay, it's a big amount. So there is that only one case that one key instance that I can think of.
Okay. Now, a lot of countries across the world have enacted statutes specifically to combat slums, and the most prominent ones being in the US, because 28 out of 50 states have enacted anti-SLAPP legislation. There's no federal law yet, but one of the requirements that some of these laws mention is that in a case which is proven to be a SLAM, there will be compulsory awarding of legal costs to the defendant in order to compensate his money spent in defending himself. So that I think is a very important legal intervention to safeguard the rights of those organizations. And there are several other uh, legislations. For example, Australia protects public opinion for public interest under the Protection of Public Participation Act. South Africa's National Environmental Management Act protects environmental speech and information. So there is legislative effort in the world to prevent slaps and to ensure that free speech and public discourse is protected. So do you think such sort of legislation or safeguards can be put in place in India, uh, or do you think they might succeed?
Now, the question of can those be put in place? The answer is no. Should there be? Of course, yes. Can. Why am I saying no to can? No, no, no. No, we are living in an ethos where where the government is first of all trying to dilute environmental laws. Now, we have a government which uh, kind of defends Section 377 in court. We have an ethos where the criminal defamation still exists, and we have politicians sending legal notices or filing criminal defamation notices against so many people. No, there were still, we have still, far away from kind of enacting any legislation where you use the term slap in the or using slap for the want of a better word. You can probably use some other term if you want. In any legislation, can that be done? Do you see that happening in the next 10, 15 years? The answer is no. We are nowhere in that stage. Kind of towards formulating such kind of a legislation. No, I don't really see that happening. Definitely not in the immediate future.
So that's a very bleak forecast, but I'm guessing it's frankly realistic in my opinion. But since our viewers and the Climate Tracker Network is yeah,
Can I interrupt you once here?
yes.
No, no. Is it that I'm despondent just for the sake of it because I'm like that, or do I have a reason? I do have a reason. I'll give you the example of the Supreme Court judgment in the criminal defamation. Okay, in that case, now who were those all those people uh, who were asking for criminal defamation to take them? All of them were politicians. And there was Arvind Kejriwal, there was Subramaniam Swamy, and there was Rahul Gandhi, and there were a host of others. They were all those cases kind of clubbed together. That was happened a couple of years back, right? Or maybe a year and a half back. Now, it's all fine that it was, it looked wonderful. You have politicians from three different political dispensations asking for criminal defamation to be taken away. The thing is that all of them, on the other hand, all their parties, on the other hand, all have taken course to defamation, civil or criminal. Uh, give you a very recent example. The Shashi Tharoor filed a criminal defamation case against Republic TV. No, I can understand his sentiments, and no, he was. There's every reason. He had every reason to feel aggrieved. He had every reason to feel harassed. Now, if a person like Shashi Tharoor is just not any other politician, right? He is not only one of the most articulate ones. He is also the most acceptable across political dispersions, and he's a thinking person. You don't expect uh, a person like Shashi Tharoor to file a criminal defamation case when no when all of us are kind of fighting against criminal defamation. That we want criminal defamation to go away, and there in such a situation you have a person of the eminence of Shashi Tharoor filing a criminal defamation case. That, in my opinion, apart from the fact that it's simply not done, like, it tells you the kind of the kind of times that we live in. Now, if a person like Shashi Tharoor is pushed to the wall so much that he feels that he has no other option but to file a criminal defamation case. Uh, kind of all this kind of boils down to the fact that no, we are still far way ahead of kind of reaching a stage where we formulated legislation which kind of uh, first of all does away with criminal defamation and introduces an anti-slap legislation. I don't see that happening in the near future. Neither would you probably.
Correct. So yes, so if that is true, which I think it is, um, the fact is that especially young people entering the profession who want to write about environmental issues, who feel like it is their responsibility to report on these issues, would find it significantly intimidating, considering the reality of such lawsuits and other intimidation tactics that corporations use. And environmental journalism does involve reporting against powerful corporations almost all the time, if not always. But in that situation, how I mean, as a closing note, I would really like to know what you would like to advise our uh, network and young journalists who are entering the profession as to how to continue to speak truth to power, how to continue reporting on environmental issues of interest, of significance, and to uphold this uh, uphold the responsibility of the fourth estate. So we would really like to hear your closing thoughts on that.
In terms of, this can be split across various segments. In terms of, should you be feeling scared? If of corporations, the answer is you should not be feeling scared, but you should definitely be wary of them. No, surely, there's no point being foolhardy. There's no point being foolishly brave. I mean, if you're taking on a powerful organization, you might as well have everything in place, which includes first of all the story itself. Forget whether the story has legal merit or not. That's a coming. Does it have journalistic merit? First of all, if you're writing a story, does it have journalistic merit? Are you just doing kite flying? Are you just throwing about allegations in the air? No, that to me is bad journalism in any case. If you're doing doing bad journalism, then you need to be thrown out in any case. That's one thing. So if your story is good, if your story has merit, then the question comes up, whether it has legal merit, whether it has legal loopholes. Now, uh, one of the things that we keep on talking about, if you have a defamation case or any other kind of legal case filed against you, what is your best defense? Your best defense is the truth. So what does the truth mean? That the truth means that your story itself should be rock solid. There should not be loopholes. No, you cannot be just, like I said, throwing around allegations just for the sake of it. You can't be doing that. You may or may not like a corporate organization, you may or may not like Reliance, you may or may not like Ambani or whatever. But that doesn't mean that you just write about like any story. If you're writing a story like so you have a basic premise, you have to everything needs to be backed by facts. It cannot be backed by opinion. If it is backed by opinion, then it becomes an opinion piece in itself. So that's what I keep telling all journalists anyway, that your story should be solid. What does a solid story mean? Which means that uh, uh, everything has to be based on facts. Facts have to be tied together. And if there is opinion is all fine because opinion is needed as well. Opinion analysis, but in analysis is broadly an opinion. My analysis is something based on my understanding, my opinion, etc. It's a mix of all those things. So if there is analysis, if there is opinion, those have to be tied to the facts as well. Which, in my as far as my understanding is concerned, that is should be one of the basic tenets of good journalism in any case. So why was it that you should be scared of coppers? You need not be scared of coppers, but yeah, you need to be careful with your own story. You have to have to do a good story. You need to have a good facts. You need to have facts. It cannot be fiction.
Yeah, I think that's extremely valid and like pointed advice, especially given our network and how many of them are just entering the profession, and I think they will benefit a lot from your insight. I think it's really important because every mistake we make in this fight can cost the entire fight significantly, because that's all that corporations even want to point out at, that if one journalist makes the slightest error, it's seen as a tendency, or the profession is maligned as being incorrect, which is the danger of always combating such entities. So I think your experience and your advice today, and especially your insights about SLAPs and environmental journalism are going to be extremely valued. I think this podcast, once it goes live on YouTube, it will be shared extensively, and I'm hoping that a lot more people will be interested in this issue of SLAPs, keep their eyes open for such instances, and report to us if they feel that they are being targeted unfairly, or they are being subject to such slams. I'm hoping that they can reach out to me, and I'm attempting to document something similar, like you suggested initially, about how important it is to have documentation about slaps in India as well.
Right.
So I'm genuinely grateful and thankful to you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you did too, and I look forward to uh, keeping in touch with Climate Tracker and with your work as well. So we will end the broadcast now. Thank you all for joining us today. And if you have any questions for Subir, please send them to us, and we will ensure that we forward them to him. And thank you all for joining us today. And thank you, Subir, once again. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And thanks to the audience also for joining.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Right. Bye.